So hello everyone, sorry I've not been available for some days. I've been spending the month of January this year doing some music. As you know, I'm a musician as well, actually an amateur musician. I could be a professional in coming months because I've been taking lessons on music and I've been playing for a few years now, actually about several years now. So that's why I've not been available to make videos on FleetMS version 2. But now we are going to continue from where we stopped, and hopefully within February we are going to be rounding up FleetMS version 2 and then moving to FleetMS version 3, which actually has to do with Node.js, AngularJS, and PostgreSQL. So FleetMS version 2 we are going to be rounding up because that has to do with Spring Boot. We are going to be moving away completely from Spring Boot onto something a more modern technology that's Node.js, Angular, and other libraries. So now let's continue from where we stopped. Today we are going to be talking about Dockerizing Spring Boot. Not actually to Dockerize, but to Dockerize Spring Boot together with MySQL. So we want to containerize FleetMS, containerize MySQL, and network the two of them together at this point. Actually, to Dockerize is not a problem, but to network the two is where the problem lies. As usual, I've made a step-by-step and it's available right here on my website. If you want to find my website, simply go to Google and type Kyneton. And if you just type Kyneton, Kyneton the Genius, or just Kyneton, you go to my website and just scroll down the page, you'll see the blogs I wrote recently. So if you go down and see I wrote this recently, and you can see Dockerize FleetMS version 2. That's the page we are now. So it's going to be step by step. Everything I'm trying to do is going to be always step by step, as you know. That's what I try to do. So if you miss out something, you're going to check it on my website. And also, if you need to check the code is available for the complete application in my GitHub repository. You can find the link in the description box of this video. Again, if you are joining for the first time, subscribe so that you don't miss anything. If you also want to know what's going on, simply go to start from the beginning of this class from lesson 1. It's quite interesting, and it's also step by step. All right, so let's go start working now. So the first thing we want to do is we want to do three things. We want to containerize a MySQL. So we are not going to be saying connect to local MySQL. We're going to put MySQL in a container so that we can package it together with FleetMS. And it's not going to be running on our local system, but it's going to be running inside a container, and we connect these two containers together. So let's first containerize MySQL and have it running inside a container instead of running on our local host. So to do this, the first thing you want to do is to pull MySQL image from DockerHub repository. So what do we do? I'm going to my terminal here. So if at this point, I need to pull MySQL image. Image is something you use to run a container. So it's more or less like a virtual machine. So I'm going to say docker pull MySQL. It's not going to work because Docker is not running. So I'm going to start Docker. Let's see. So I'm going to look for Docker and start it up because you actually need Docker installed, and you have to start it before you can use Docker commands. So I'm going to use Docker pull now to pull MySQL. So it's starting up, so let's wait for a second. Again, this is where we are. So I think we are rounding up now. We are actually, let me see. Yeah, so we are in part 53. I think we should have about 10 to go or less because all these deployments, maybe just we can do it in one class. Okay, so let's go back here. So if I do Docker pull, meanwhile, if you want to check the containers available in your local repository, you can just say Docker image ls. So here we don't have MySQL, so I'm going to now use Docker pull MySQL, and it's going to pull MySQL from the remote repository down to my local repository, and it's going to be available for me in my local repository. All right, so it takes a few seconds. So at this point, it pulled it. So if I now run the command, let me clear my console. If I run the command docker image ls, you can see that we have my SQL there with a tag latest, okay? Now, this is MySQL now the image of MySQL, like the virtual machine that is for MySQL, not started right now. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to run the command docker run to start up this MySQL inside the container, simply to boot up the MySQL virtual machine. The virtual machine containing MySQL is what I'm going to start up using this command. So it's going to be docker run, and it's going to be -d. -d means detached mode, meaning that it's not going to be interrupting the terminal. I can also use the terminal, so it's not going to display the logs on the terminal, so that's why it's detached. It's running in the background. Okay, so I'm going to use -p, then you specify the outside port. I want it to run on port 3308 outside, because I have MySQL running locally on port 3306. Okay, so let's now use port 3308 to run outside, but inside the container it's free to run on port 3306, and I'm going to give it a name, -name. I'm going to specify MySQL Docker. So this name is now the name of the container that's going to be created when this application starts running. And then we want to specify some environment variable like username, password, and the name of the database to be created when it starts up. So in this case, I'm going to simply copy the environment variables and paste so that I don't waste much time. So I'm going to copy the environment variables and paste it, save my time. Okay. So let me just explain a little bit. So environment variable, we have three of them. We have -m to specify this is an environment variable. Root password is root. We have MySQL password is root, and then I'm creating a database called FleetDB Docker. That's the name of the initial database I want to create when this MySQL server database starts up. And then I'm specifying the container to run is MySQL. Remember, the container we downloaded or we pulled from the repository is MySQL. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter key, and let's see, typo. Unknown flag -n. Do I have -n anywhere? Let's see. Okay, it should be -- name. It should be. So I'm going to go all the way back. -name. Okay. So now it started the MySQL container running. How do we know? I can simply say docker container. Container is a running image. Just keep this definition in mind. Container is a running image. So if I say docker container ls, you can see that we have a container running here. It's been up for 18 seconds, and the name of this container is MySQL Docker. Okay. Now this is MySQL container running, and we can go into this container to actually access the MySQL inside this container. And to do that, I'm simply going to use docker exec. Well, let me clear my console. I'm going to say docker exec. IT should be interactive mode, -IT, and the container I'm running is MySQL Docker, and the command I'm going to run is bash. This. Okay. So we are inside the container right now. We are now going to run MySQL command inside the container. So basically this inside the more or less similar to Linux container, Linux system. So you can see the file system of the container. But now I want to run the MySQL server inside. So I'm going to say MySQL -u, username is root, and password is root as well. And now we are inside the container, the MySQL container. Now we can now view the databases to see if it actually created this initial database by saying show databases. I think this should be it. And you can see that it has one database called FleetDB Docker. If I say use FleetDB Docker, and then is FleetDB, use FleetDB, give me a second. Unknown database FleetDB, okay, it should be underscore Docker, so it should be underscore. And if I say show tables, Now there's no table there, so it's an empty database. If you use Hibernate to start up Spring Boot, it's going to create all the database objects inside our application. So this is where we are. We've created our database, MySQL inside a container. So the next step now, we want to Dockerize our Spring Boot application here. So the first thing we want to do here is to create a Dockerfile. I've not created, so I'm going to create a new Dockerfile now. So I'm going to right click here. Of course, I'm following this procedure you see right here on your screen. So I think I will point in this way as I can't really figure out the direction. So Dockerfile, yeah, so the content of the Dockerfile, I'm going to take it from here. Actually, to Dockerize Spring Boot, there are two ways. The simple way without Dockerfile is very easy, but this one is the normal way, which is a bit just a normal way. Not that it's difficult, but it's just a normal way. The easy way is also here. You can actually learn it from this link here, you see. But it's good to know how to use Dockerfile. The easy way says don't use Dockerfile, just use a command and use build packs. But I'm not going to be doing that. You can learn it. You can just do it yourself. It's very easy. All right, so this is what the Dockerfile looks like. It simply says the target where we have the target. I mean, the jar files of our system is in this place, which we don't have right now. And the name of the entry point is going to be app.jar, which is what we have here. Okay, so this is a basic Dockerfile. I think this is a template Dockerfile. You can always use it and just make a little modification. Now we want to build the, give me 1 second. I think we missed out a step. So the first step is to create the jar file, as in to build this application, to create a jar file for this application. And to do that, we need to first, let me see, give me 1 second. We want to create this, first let's make this application. Let's make this application use the MySQL inside the container. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to my application, the properties file. For now, let's just make it use the MySQL inside the container. So I'm going to go to src main resources, and go to application properties. Now here we are going to specify the MySQL inside the container, right? But before we do that, let's try to connect inside the container. The reason I'm going to connect inside the container is because if I go to, I think I did expose the ports that's going to be running outside the container. So let's see, yeah. So this line here says run outside the container at 3308, but run inside the container at 3306. So 3308 is exposed to the outside. So if I use 3308, I could connect to this MySQL inside the container with port 3308. That's what I'm going to be doing now. So let me try to use Workbench first. MySQL Workbench. Let me try to connect with 3308 and see if I can get into this container and access the MySQL in there. So if I come here and go to new here, new connection, and let me just call it Docker. Okay, let me call it Docker underscore Docker. Okay, and I'm going to say this username is root. Now the port is going to be changed to 3308 because that's the port that was exposed. Remember, if I say test connection, I'm specifying the password to be root. That's the same password. And it says connection successfully made, and say okay, and say okay. It created the connection to inside the container. This is not local host, but we are right inside the container, and you can now see that we have the Docker FleetDB Docker, which was created right inside the container, not in our local host, but inside the container. So everything is going perfectly well now. So we have our MySQL inside the container. We now want to make sure the FleetDB application is also inside the container. Now we're going to make some changes here. We're going to put in the port number here and put in the name of the database. The correct name of the database should be FleetDB underscore Docker. I'm going to change it here, so increase the font a little bit. FleetDB underscore Docker. And it can be localhost. it can also be the name of the container, right? So if we go back to the command, you can find the name of the container. Let me see. So I think I did Docker container ls will give us the name of the container, but I can also use localhost. Well, you can try to use the name of the container. I think it should be MySQL Docker. So localhost is also okay because this container is running in the same IP address 128.0.0.1 as localhost. So let's leave localhost here. And let's run this application and make sure that it connects to the data, to the MySQL inside the container. So I'm going to hit the run key, the run button here, and let's see what happens. Okay, something does not work, and the error is saying, okay, we have to change the password because it's not the correct password. So it's going to be root, not root user. So I'm going to run it one more time, and at this time I hope it's going to work. Okay, so it's creating all the objects. Hibernate is doing things, creating all the tables and all the objects. So if I go back to MySQL here, inside the container, I'm going to tables now. It's created all the tables for us here, as you can see. So it's actually connecting right inside the container. So everything is fine so far. So we now want to Dockerize our application. Okay, so what we are going to do now, first I'm going to go to this target. Just 1 second. Okay, so it did not generate the jar files for now, so it's okay. So I can actually delete all these generated things here. Delete. So now we have connection inside the container. Okay. We want to create the jar file. So let's come back here. So now we are going to be connecting from inside the container. Let's see. So we have localhost. Now we are going to specify here the name of the MySQL container, because now we are making it connect from container to container. So I'm going to now specify the name of the MySQL container. So I'm going to come here and say exit, and also exit, and say Docker container ls, and the container is MySQL Docker. So I'm going to replace localhost here with MySQL -Docker. And this time I'm going to now change the port, because now we are connecting to the MySQL inside from another container. So it can actually be 3306 or 3308. And the name of the database is okay. So let's now build the jar file for this Spring Boot application. So I'm going to say here, where my console first, I'm going to say ambient clean install minus these key tests. So I'm going to build the jar file for our application, and let's see, because we need the jar file for us to build the image of this application. And once it's complete, we should be able to see in the target, we can see the jar file created right here. FleetMS 2.0.0.1 snapshot.jar, the same name available we gave inside the Dockerfile. All right, so the next thing we want to do, we have the jar file, we now want to build the image. And I'm going to call this image FleetMS. So I'm going to say Docker builds. Actually, I'm going to navigate to the root directory. So I'm going to say cd I'm in the root directory. So I'm going to say, permit me to just say ls. So I want to make sure the Docker file is here, because I'm using the Docker file in the same directory. So I'm going to apply my console and say Docker build -t, the target, -t actually should be target. It's going to be tag, not target. So the tag is fleet, fleet-image, that's the name, and the location of the Docker file is in the same directory. I'm going to put a dot. And it's going to build our image at this point. So I'm going to hit the enter key and it says what? FleetMS 2.2001 not found. So 2. Okay, so you can see it's 2-0-0, not 2 underscore, because if we go to our Docker file, I think we have an underscore here. So let's check the Docker file. So if I go to my Docker file, so you have underscore here, and that's not correct. So it's going to be fleets ms. Okay, so it's recognized. Okay, so we need to have the app.jar as well. Okay, like this. Okay, so let me save my Docker file and let's go review. So we have FleetMS 2001 snapshot jar. All right, so let's go to the image one more time. Enter. And at this point, the image was created. So if I play my console and say Docker image ls, we have the image is there as fleet image tag latest. We have MySQL tag latest. So everything is working perfectly okay. What we now want to do is to run this application so that as it's running, it's going to also start up MySQL container as well. So we are running on the container now. We want to run it on our container right now. So let me just make sure. I hope this should be correct. Okay, that's fine. So we want to link the two containers, and we have to do it using a command. So we want to run this application now for it to start up the two containers at the same time. And to do that, I'm going to use a command. Docker. One second. I hope this is not in use. Okay, because that's a 3306. So we have Docker run -t, and we want to run the fleet image. So I'm going to link using the link command to link MySQL Docker image, MySQL -Docker. One second, let me just make sure. Okay, yeah. So I'm running MySQL command inside MySQL Docker container, MySQL, and I'm exposing port 8080 for the FleetMS, both inside and outside. So I'm going to say -p 8080 outside and 8080 inside. I'm going to run fleet image. So I'm hitting my enter key and hopefully it's going to start, and let's see what we have. Alright, so Tomcat started. Now we are not doing anything on localhost, everything is inside the container. Container runs, that's another container, and FleetMS and MySQL running both inside container network together using the link command, and that should be fine. So if I go to port 8081, why is it saying Tomcat started on port 8081? So let's see. So 8081, HTTP at port 8081. So it's going to be 8080 actually, because let's see. Okay, so I think I know where the problem is coming from. So we have 8081 specified here, and that is a problem. So what I'm going to do now is, so that's a big problem. So I'm going to remove it, and that means that we are going to rebuild this application one more time. That's not a problem. Let's just do the whole process again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete Docker image, delete all of this, and then rebuild. So The same command I used to run, it should be this to run. Okay, so everything should be fine. Hopefully it works. All right. So Tomcat started on port 8080 now, so I think it should work. So if we go to port 8080, let's go to port 8080, and you can see that FleetMS started perfectly well. So we've succeeded in containerizing our application, containerized FleetMS, containerized MySQL, link them together. Now there's one more thing you need to learn. Actually, it's called Docker networks. So Docker networks helps you create a network and then add the two of them to the network. So it's more or less a better way of doing the link command I did. And there's another way to automate it called Docker Compose. We are going to be talking about this later. I don't want this video to be too long, but it's already too long. Please remember to leave me a comment. Please subscribe to my channel. Like this video as well, and also reach out to me on my social network profile, maybe Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever, so that we can actually communicate and see how we are doing. I remain Kindson the Tech Pro, and I'm always there for you.